Moving on to another interesting speech to watch for today at the UN General Assembly, and that is tonight. The new president of Syria, Ahmed Al-Sharaa. This will be his first such address to the UN after he took over the reins of Syria last December. And ahead of that speech, Al-Sharaa met yesterday with the former head of the CIA, David Petraeus. He, of course, was a key figure, many people will remember, in the war fought by the US-led coalition in Iraq. And to take a look at that fascinating conversation between the two men on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, I am now joined on set here by France 24 journalist Wassim Nasr. Hi, Wassim. There's a photo first, I think you want to show us, that sends a very strong symbol.
Very strong symbol to see those two men talking together with a lot of familiarity, if I may say so. Because as you said, of course, General Petraeus was the head of the CIA, but before he was the head of the US forces in Iraq, while Ahmed Al-Sharaa was a prisoner in American prison facilities in Iraq. So it was quite interesting to hear them both. And at one moment, Petraeus says to Sharaa, my mission in Iraq was very difficult. And Sharaa responds, he goes, but my mission in Syria is much more difficult. As in Iraq, you could have left. We don't have the choice to leave. Meaning we are Syrians, we have to handle it. And at another part, the Sharaa says that we fought each other at one time, but now the time of dialogue has came, and which was actually proved by this meeting and with the welcoming of Ahmed Sharaa in the US. And we have a picture of him with Marco Rubio, so the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the State Department, which is very telling too, because America is actually endorsing Ahmed Sharaa. But to talk a little bit about this, we know that we had like the crews, Syrian crews, who worked on this relation with the US. So we have a photo of Ahmed Sharaa, his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Asad Shibani, and Qutayba al-Idlibi. And those three men I met at different moments. I met Sharaa. Yes, I met Sharaa and Shibani in Idlib in 2023, and then again in Syria, in Damascus, and then in Paris. And Qutayba al-Idlibi, I met him last summer in Syria, while he was just freshly recruited as head of the US Department in the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Syrian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Meaning Qutayba al-Idlibi, he's a member of the Atlantic Council, and he signs papers for the Washington Institute. And he left Syria, he fled Syria under Assad to Lebanon, Egypt, and he benefited from a program in the US in order to have his diplomas, actually. And with him, we can see also Razan Safour. Razan Safour is a British Syrian, the only woman we see on the right of the picture, a British Syrian woman who had in charge the communication. She actually worked on all those events at Concordia, at the Middle East Institute, and all the public relations of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and of Asad Shibani. And we see with them also, we have another picture where we see Ibrahim al-Ulabi. Here it is, he's behind me actually. So here we see Ibrahim al-Ulabi, the new envoy of Syria to the UN. He's a representative of Syria to the UN, just behind me. And actually, he graduated from Oxford, and he's a British Syrian. And what's important, here we see him at the UN, next to Shibani and next to Al-Sharaa. And what's interesting is that those people worked hand in hand with others to have an outcome. And we have a picture we're going to see of Sharaa with the French president and with the head of state of Qatar, because actually Sharaa was very welcome at the UN Assembly. And allow me to show you another picture at the Middle East Institute, where Sharaa was welcomed, and he was questioned by Charles Lister, who works on those issues since more than 10 years. And the most interesting part in this picture we're going to see next to after this one,
the Middle East Institute, Washington-based.
Exactly, and we're going to see in another picture where we see the people that I described earlier, the people who worked on the American relations, the Minister of Social Affairs, the woman, she's Christian, and the Minister of Information next to Asad Shibani. But most interestingly, behind the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you have Qutayba Kadish. Qutayba Kadish is one of the people who followed Ahmed Sharaa since the days of exile from Damascus to Idlib, and he helped him out in Idlib to build up what became the government of salvation with Asad Shibani and others, and he helped them also to take over Damascus, and today he's heading the protocol for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the thing is that both old recruits, core people who were with Ahmed al-Sharaa, who followed him since the beginning, and the new recruits are working together in order to make this relation with Washington work.
And it looks as though, from what you're saying and from those pictures, that an awful lot of effort is going in on both sides in Washington and from all those various people in Syria to try and make this relationship work for the good of Syria, for the good of Washington.
Yes, for both,
does both sides?
Because before this visit to Washington, there's something which didn't have any media coverage, actually. It was the visit of the head of the Central Command, the U.S. Central Command to Damascus, first. And you have a picture of it. Here he is in white. He's wearing white because he's an admiral from the Navy. And this is the first time the head of the CENTCOM visits Damascus. And we have another picture, and this is also very interesting. Actually, the head of the CENTCOM visited Damascus with his wife. So we see him here with his wife, and we see Ahmed al-Sharaa, the Syrian president, with his wife, meaning the visit was really a protocol. The visit was to confirm, actually, that U.S. is backing Damascus. And maybe we'll have another picture where we see, actually, the power holders in Syria. On the right of the picture, we have the Minister of Foreign Affairs that we mentioned, Asad Shibani. Next to him, the Minister of Defense, Ahmed Abu Qasr. Next to him, the Minister of Interior, Anas Khattab. The head of Intelligence, Salemi, who was in Paris lately, and also Mohammad Qanatri, who actually is working with Qutayb al-Idlibi that you mentioned before on the relations with the U.S., meaning the U.S. is really important for the new Syrian authorities. It's really important for them to have good relations with the U.S.
And what kind of ties are they trying to signal?
Well, actually, when you see that the head of the CENTCOM visited Syria, it's not like any common event. If you look at the map, you see that the areas of activity of the CENTCOM are just huge, meaning all the areas of conflict in the Middle East and even the areas where the U.S. retreated from. Actually, the head of the CENTCOM visited Damascus just after visiting Israel, meaning they are trying to work on an agreement between Damascus and Israel with the help of the U.S., but most importantly, too, they are working on something to have a settlement with the Syrian Democratic Forces, meaning dominated by the Kurdish factions in northern eastern Syria, in order to make them merge in the Syrian army, but also to allow Damascus to handle all the foreign fighters that are on those prisons up to today.
And how do the different, this public display then, how is that perceived by different factions in Syria?
Well, actually, you can imagine it's very badly perceived by the most radical factions, because if we are talking now about the public aspect of this relation, but there was also an undercover aspect of this relation. We know, for example, that for the first time we had a common operation between U.S. What we see here actually is handling a U.S. citizen in December, which was found in Ghouta. He was imprisoned in Assad jails, and this is Ubaida Arnaout, who handled him to the head of the U.S. military in Syria at the time, meaning they went through the Badia, through the desert, so Islamic State territory, just to handle these American citizens to the Americans directly. And that was a very important gesture. But before of that, or actually after that, we had before and after, we had many interconnections actually. Back in July, there was an operation in Al-Bab in the Aleppo area. We have a footage of it, where for the first time publicly, there was a U.S., a Turkish, Syrian joint operation against actually the Islamic State. So this is the footage that we see. So they are going public on it. Before in August, in the area of Atme, again, another operation between only U.S. Special Forces and Syrian Special Forces by night. We have the footage also against a leader of the Islamic State. And when I was in Idlib, back in April 2023, there was actually a common operation between HTS at the time and the U.S. to kill one of the most important heads of the Islamic State in the area. And even what we see here now, actually, this footage is from 2022. This is a U.S. military operation in Idlib, which is filmed by HTS jihadis at the time. They did not shoot on the helicopters. They secured the area, in order for the US to be able to kill who was actually Abu Ibrahim, the Caliph of the Islamic State. So they had already a relation with the US, which is today going public and official.